It's a cold and wet winter morning in Melbourne, and Federation Square is jammed-packed. More than 2,000 people are there, and it's about 12:45 in the morning. All these people are not here for a person to walk on stage, but rather have their eyes glued to the big screen. It's not showing AFL or tennis or soccer, as has happened before and since, but rather they are watching what is going on at a racecourse about 30 miles west of central London. It is the running of the 2012 Diamond Jubilee Stakes at the Ascot racecourse in the UK. It is the fifth and final day of the annual Royal Ascot meetings. On day one, Frankel, the champion 4-year-old, put on his greatest performance, demolishing the field in the opening race on the opening day, the Queen Anne Stakes. Frankel at the time was the best horse in the world. Well, best behind maybe only one, because all those in Fair Square were interested in Black Caviar. The Australian superstar who, like Frankel, came to Royal Ascot undefeated. Unlike Frankel, however, the Aussie had come a further distance, and a longer winning streak was trying to be kept intact. Black Caviar sits alongside Makybe Diva and Winx, one of the three great Australian mares of the 21st century thus far. She has an unbeaten winning streak that is longer than all, except that of 1870s champion Kingsham, who I have done a video on. When you watch her races back, you'll notice Black Caviar won a lot of her races, including Group 1s, very easily. You weren't concerned about her chances at any point. Well, there is one major exception. It is the one all those in freezing cold Melbourne are about to watch. At Royal Ascot 2012, in front of the Queen, Black Caviar had to fight like never before as she took on the world's best. Black Caviar was born on the 18th of August 2006 at Gilgai Farm in Nangbi, Victoria. In December 2007, this 1-year-old filly was sent to Swettenham Stud for a 10-week yearling preparation. She was sold for $210,000 at the Melbourne yearling sale. She was side by Bella Spree, winner of the 2003 Doomben 10,000. He also side Belle Mare, a mare that won the 2009 Group 1 Robert Sangster Stakes in Adelaide. Black Caviar was the first foal of an unraced mare, Helsinge, a daughter of the British racehorse Desert Sun. Desert Sun side the champion New Zealand mare, Sunline. Towards the end of Black Caviar's career, another horse who Helsinge was the dam of would win Group 1s. All Too Hard, who won the 2012 Caulfield Guineas before winning the All-Age Stakes, the Futurity Stakes and the CF Stakes in 2013, as well as finishing second in the 2012 Cox Plate. Black Caviar weighed about 570 kilograms, which is 1,260 pounds, and stood 16.2 hands, which is 66 inches or 168 centimetres high. That meant she resembled her grandsire, Royal Academy, and great-grandsire Nijinsky, who won the English Triple Crown of the 2000 Guineas, the Derby, and the St. Leger in 1970. The man who trained her would be Peter Moody, hailing from the tiny rural Queensland town of Wyandra. He was based in Melbourne, where Black Caviar would run most of her races. For 22 of her 25 starts, she was ridden by Luke Nolan. Nolan is from the rural town of Managatang in northern Victoria. Beginning in Queensland country races, he's been riding professionally since 1998. He rode Black Caviar in 14 of her 15 Group 1s. He has ridden 38 Group 1 winners all up at the time of recording. One last person who needs to be mentioned in the Black Caviar story is Jared Waitley. Then a commentator for the Australian ABC, Waitley became her number one fan and called many of her races for a radio audience. On the Queen's Birthday holiday 2016, ahead of a Collingwood and Melbourne AFL match, Waitley went down a slide into ice-cold water in the fight against MND in Black Caviar's colours. To this day, Waitley talks about the book he wrote on Black Caviar as the highlight of his storied media career. Black Caviar won a couple of races by big margins as a 2-year-old. Her first start at 3 saw her partner for the first time with Nolan, starting an iconic horse-jockey combo when she won the listed Crockett Stakes. Her 8th win in a row, her first Group 1 on the 6th of November 2010 at Flemington in the Patinack Farm Classic, now the VRC Champion Sprint, a race that is part of the Melbourne Cup Carnival, put her on the radar of a lot of the general public and casual racing observers. She was seemingly impossible to beat and hard to even get close to. Before the trip to England, she won 21 of 21 races. All but 6 of them were won by margins of more than 2 lengths to second. 71.4% of those 21 wins were by 2.1 lengths or more, and one of those 6 was by a win of exactly 2 lengths. So if you push that number back 0.1 of a length, we are talking 76.2% of wins are above the given threshold. This one is 2 lengths or more. Nothing in Australia could stop her. no matter how often Hayles tried. But could the racing in Europe do the job? The world was about to find out. Black Caviar would head to England and to Royal Ascot. Her last races in Australia before this were in Adelaide. She won her 20th race in the Robert Sangster Stakes at Morphettville, breaking the record for longest winning streak by an Australian horse, jointly held by Desert Gold and Gloaming at 19. Then 2 weeks later, she started a $4 favourite in a Goodwood. So big was the occasion, the AFL adjusted the starting time for a match between the Adelaide Crows and the Geelong Cats at Football Park to the unusually early 12:45, just so it wouldn't clash with the Goodwood. She won the Goodwood by 1 length to move to 21 straight wins.
Black Caviar, the equine superstar of the world, and that's 21 today.
3 weeks later, she would make the trip to the UK. There had been talk about Black Caviar racing overseas for a while at this point. Nolan was hoping Moody would do that as far back as May 2011, as Black Caviar was being prepped for her 13th race in the BTC Cup, now the Kingsford Smith Cup. There is an argument among some that Australian opposition is just far too easy, and that to be truly proven as one of the best of all time, you have to win overseas, something those who have scrolled comment sections of any video on Winx for more than about 2 seconds can attest. The preferred destination for Australian connections is Royal Ascot. It is a bit of an odd choice given its races, even the Group 1s, are really lead-ups to bigger and better things later in the year. However, the presence of the royal family and the fact that it sits in a quiet spot of the year in Australian racing makes it the best option. The likes of Quassia, Takeover Target, Miss Andretti and Star Spangled Banner have saluted already, and Nature Strip would do so in the King's Stand 10 years after Black Caviar. The trip to the UK was a 30-hour one, and Black Caviar wore a compression suit to aid blood movement. The suit was actually recommended by Australian hurdler Sally Pearson, who later that year won the women's 100 hurdles at the London Olympics. After stops in Singapore and in the UAE, Black Caviar landed in the UK at Heathrow Airport on board a Singapore Airlines cargo flight, touching down on the evening of the 7th of June. From there, she was loaded onto a horse box and taken to Abington Place Stables in Newmarket in preparation for the Diamond Jubilee Stakes over 6 furlongs on June the 23rd, her 22nd start. There were plans to head to Newmarket the following month for the July Cup. She was given the great respect from local bookies, being placed at 2-1 on for the Group 1, with one British bookmaker offering 6-1 for her to win by 5 lengths or more. Jeff O'Connor, Moody's racing manager, made it clear she was here to win. If she's beaten, but we're not here to be beaten. Despite all the precautions that were taken ahead of the trip, Black Caviar was clearly not at 100%. In the lead-up to the race, Moody was worried about her. She had grumbly suspensory, a torn ligament, which she sustained in her last run in Adelaide, and she's got bad feet. At this point, the trainer was probably regretting how she was prepped, especially those races in Adelaide. However, she galloped beautifully at Newmarket in front of a big media crowd 5 days before race day. That was a Tuesday, the same day of Frankel's Queen Anne win, and that was the only gallop she would get. Moody makes it clear to the owners that night that the plan to target the July Cup beyond Royal Ascot was off. That was okay for the owners, because winning at Royal Ascot was all they really wanted anyway. It was clear she was not in the shape Moody wanted her to be, and he was struggling to make sure she was good enough for 1 race, let alone 2. Even the day before, there was unease in the Australian camp, unsure if Moody would scratch her the next day. The day before the race, Moody was asked about what she was capable of, and his line was, "A 1/4 of an inch will do us," accidentally and brilliantly foreshadowing how the following day would turn out. The race Black Caviar would take on the world in began in 1868 and was originally called the All-Age Stakes. It was renamed the Cork and Orrery Stakes in 1926 in honour of the 9th Earl of Cork. The present system of race grading was introduced in the UK in 1971, and the Cork and Orrery Stakes was initially classed as a Group 3. It became a Group 2 in 1998. 2 major things happened to the race in 2002. First, it was upgraded to a Group 1, and secondly, the race was renamed the Golden Jubilee Stakes to commemorate the Golden Jubilee of Queen Elizabeth II. The Queen celebrated 60 years on the throne in 2012, and thus the race was renamed the Diamond Jubilee Stakes. Beyond the Black Caviar edition in 2022, the race was renamed to the Platinum Jubilee Stakes to commemorate the Queen's Platinum Jubilee. In 2023, the race was given its present name, the Queen Elizabeth II Jubilee Stakes, to honour the memory of the Queen, who died the previous year, and to retain the connection to her 3 Jubilees celebrated since 2002. It really wasn't until 2:30, 75 minutes before the start, that Moody truly locked in the fact that she was going to race. Nolan was somewhat aware that she was not perfect, but probably didn't know the full extent of the situation. That day was all about Black Caviar. Racing Post called it G'day 5 of Royal Ascot. Black Caviar's biggest threat would be Moonlight Cloud, the British-bred but French-trained mare who'd won the first of what would end up being 3 straight editions of the Prix Maurice de Guest last August. She would start at 5-1, and at 8-1 was Society Rock, who won the race 12 months prior. Moody did leave it up to Nolan to be the final arbiter behind the barriers about if she ran, which was a lot of responsibility and pressure. There are just under 80,000 spectators here at Ascot. Many have come from down under. Nolan, in theory, had the last say, but once the barriers crash, there is no looking back.
Here at Royal Ascot, the Diamond Jubilee Stakes. Starter holding them. Society Rock is just rearing. A couple of them very edgy. Set. They're racing in the Golden Jubilee.
Hey, BBC caller Jim McGrath, an Aussie too. Remember the name change? Let's hope that's the worst mistake an Aussie makes in the next minute and a bit. Anyway, looking back at the start, the champ jumps well from the outside gate, but Society Rock, the 8-1 chance, flops out 5 lengths last. Black Caviar, as per usual, settles in the first few. It was at this point Nolan realised what exactly was underneath him. Black Caviar was not up on the bridle, neck arch, ears pricked. At her best, she was eager and strong once she gets into her rhythm of the run. Nolan usually had to restrain her, but he was actually wanting more, and they're not even at halfway. Watching on, Moody could see what Nolan felt. She never charges, but Luke is usually high in the saddle, sitting against her. I thought a long way out, you'll need to be every bit as good as I know you are to do this. At the halfway mark, Black Caviar looked like she would slip by Sol, ridden by Frankie Dettori for Godolphin, but it wasn't easy. Black Caviar did not reach him until Nolan was firmly urging, and he was just as busy as Dettori with 2 furlongs left to go. Black Caviar goes outright clear with about 300 yards left. French jockey Thierry Jarnet, aboard Moonlight Cloud, who started out the far side of the track in barrier 5, drifted across the expanse of Ascot and was in good position, as was Resty d'Argent at 40-1, who was tracking the champ. Black Caviar was struggling to break clear. Nolan had shaken the reins and pulled the whip to just fend off Sol. Moody could see her doing it hard and realised the tank was empty, but she had responded to Nolan's urgency sufficiently enough. She got about 1.5 lengths clear. She was hurting, having retorn the quadricep muscle. Each stride would have hurt more and more. Feeling he was far enough ahead, Nolan would ease up, and that's when Black Caviar stopped.
Here's Restia d'Argent and Moonlight Cloud. He eases up near the line. Here's Moonlight Cloud. It's tight. Black Caviar and Moonlight Cloud in a photo.
McGrath backed out of calling a winner over the line, but Waitley, calling for ABC Grandstand, was much more sure.
Black Caviar's a length in front. She's hanging on Moonlight Cloud with a late dash at her. Black Caviar by a nose. She's crowned her career at Royal Ascot, hanging on in front of the Queen by the slightest margin from the flying French filly Moonlight Cloud at the death.
Soon enough, we will get the slow-mo replay of the finish.
Home down the outside, Moonlight Cloud, as they race towards the line. Oh, she might have just got the bobbin. She's got there. She has scraped home.
The replay comes up. Oh, it's only a nose.
So after all of that, she has done it. Only just, but she has won at Royal Ascot. The Queen of the Australian turf has won in front of the Queen of England. While the immediate speculation regarding Nolan's ride was that he mistook the winning post, the real answer was much more obvious. He was just looking after her, and she was not at her best. We can see from this angle that Nolan stops riding for about 4 strides, and then has to urge again for the last 3 strides. We know Black Caviar had a long stride length of 8.42 metres. That means Nolan eases up with about 59 metres left in the horse race, and then has to go again with 25 metres left. Rewatching the final stages, Society Rock was finishing fast and finished 5th, losing by a margin that was certainly less than the margin he missed the kick by. The official margin was ahead. Turned out 1/4 of an inch was enough. It didn't have the feel like many would have expected. In the hours to come, the owners would be drinking to calm themselves down rather than to celebrate. However, there was one person in the building who was just grateful that she was there. Queen Elizabeth II got to do what she had wanted to do for a while. She got the opportunity to pat the Australian champ as she came back into the mounting yard. Waitley told his publisher that he was not going to be able to write a chapter on this race for his book on the flight back home as planned. It was going to take a couple of weeks for the dust to die down and for all involved to be ready to talk. Moody would reveal all about his worries before the race, and Nolan would get the chance to discuss what was going through his mind in the last 100 yards. He admitted to underestimating the straight six of Ascot and sensed in the immediate aftermath of the race that it would be remembered more for his ride than Black Caviar winning when below her best. While she'd won, that performance probably scared the owners of Winx from going over to Europe some 5 years later, which I think was the right call. The horse's wellness comes first, and Australia is a long way away. I still kind of wish that Winx went to Hong Kong, though. Very Elegant went overseas to Europe, and that went very poorly. But Black Caviar had won, and she headed back to Australia, potentially having run her last race. After being ruled out of the 2012 spring, she would return in 2013 for 3 more races. Firstly, at Flemington, with the Lightning Stakes over 1,000 metres, being the newly named Black Caviar Lightning, and she won the race named in her honour. Then the William Reid Stakes at Moonee Valley, and finally the T.J. Smith Stakes at Randwick, up in Sydney. Unlike Winx some 6 years later, it wasn't known to be a last race on race day, but this is how she would bow out.
She's truly in a league of her own. Black Caviar racing away from Epaulet. Black Caviar doesn't let us down. Beat Epaulet.
Black Caviar died on the 17th of August 2025, shortly after giving birth. Her foal didn't survive either. She died a day before her true 18th birthday. Ironically, Kingsham also died a day before her true birthday. Both horses were undefeated, both mares are number 1 and 2 for the longest undefeated winning streak careers, and certified their champion status by winning, albeit when below their best, in England. Black Caviar's death was a closing of a chapter for me personally. She was the first champion horse I remember, and while I have no collection of that England race, I do have memories of her last 3. They said the 19th century didn't end until the death of Queen Victoria in 1901. Well, then it can be said that my childhood didn't end until Black Caviar died, less than a month before my 19th birthday. After that last race, she returned to Melbourne to say goodbye to the racing public at Caulfield. This was the sign that was handed out that day, and yes, I still have my copy of it. Over the years, I've grown to rather dislike the who was the greatest racehorse of all time argument, perhaps more than the versions in other sports. It is really hard to even start. How to even begin to compare Black Caviar to Kingsham, to Rebo, to Man O' War, to Phar to Arkle, to Cordo Star, to Winx, to Secretariat and others. The best way to go about it, albeit still not perfect, is to look at who is the best over a given distance and surface. The turf flat champs for mine over 2 miles Farlap, 1.5 miles Seabird, 1.25 miles Winx, 1 mile Frankel, and over 6 furlongs there was no horse quite like Black Caviar.